So my guest for today is Mr. Roy Gokay Wol. Roy is a third culture kid and a p.g.a. marked filmmaker with a visual disability. He is the founder of Studio Autonomous, a content development company with a multidisciplinary think tank collective based in New York City. So Roy has done a lot of very amazing works, and all of his film credits is actually located in his description. So guys, do check him out, and if you guys need to reach out for him later on after this episode, he's available on his social media sites and Instagram or Autonomous Pictures Instagram. So without further ado, let me pass the spotlight back to Roy. How are you, my friend?
I'm very good. Very happy to be here. And for anyone who's fasting today, Ramadan Mubarak, and wishing everybody an easy fast. Very happy to be here. Thank you so much, Calvin, for inviting. I'm excited that, the TCK experience is starting to be recognized. So thanks for doing this.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. So yeah, for those of you who is watching this for the very first time, Global Citizens is an online platform whereby I invited third culture kids, expatriate, nomads, basically global citizens of all profiles to actually come for a chat for 45 minutes to an hour to share about their experiences, what it is like growing up with them, what is it like to handle the cultural differences, and to educate people who may not know that this is not an extended vacation. It's not a life in a holiday place. This is our life whereby every single time we have to question everything about ourselves, who we are, what we want to do, and how can we achieve it in a country that may not be openly accepting towards us. And I hope this is you guys reap something out of it. So without further ado, I will be asking Roy his first question. And I'm sorry, my friend, but the first one is somehow it's always the mixed one, since some people like it, some people hate it. Please define, yep, you guessed it. Please give me your meaning of home and which part of your life has been an anchor to you that makes you remember that you are Roy at the end of the day.
Yeah, thank you for this question. I think it's really interesting because I was actually at a meeting the other day, and someone brought up that I've been traveling as a serial immigrant, as a young person that had very mixed experiences. They asked me, like, is this your final stop? Is this home? And I said, this is not my final stop. And then they asked me what your final stop is, and I said, I have no idea. So that's definitely that maybe is the easiest answer that I can give. But one thing for sure is that I didn't have the knowledge or the language, and I think also this concept, at least in terms of the academical side of it, is somewhat relatively new. Although the experience is very old, but the recognition is very new, I think. And so I didn't know that I was a TCK for basically all my life. And we have my brother who has a similar experience. We always have conversations about this. So where home is really where I feel welcomed, where I feel accepted. But I always feel whenever I'm in a space where there are many different experiences that are open to share their experiences, relate to each other, want to bridge each other's experience for a larger goal, that's where I feel home. And not to get into the work side of things, but my work sort of naturally ended up being that. When I was a young kid, when they asked me where I was from, I would have to take maybe 5 minutes to explain, because my birth country, which is Israel, was where I was only for 6 months. And when people ask me where you were born, and I say Israel, they think I'm Israeli, which I don't consider myself as an Israeli in terms of like culturally. And it's simply a citizenship, And so I would have to also always explain. Today, when somebody asks, I always say I'm a New Yorker, although I was not born here. I've been here for 12 years. Before here, I was in Canada for 9 years. And before that, I was actually in Turkey. And before that, we were in Argentina as a family for some time. And then, of course, Israel by birth. And I don't know if that answers it, but that's the truth. So that's the reality.
Well, there's no right or wrong answer, Roy. I mean, this is your life at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. I mean, we define it as what it is. Okay. Do you remember the exact moment when you discovered that you are a TCK, and what do you think though has been the ultimate blessing being one? And just to make it fair, this is not my words. This is
Yeah,
actually one of my followers actually gave it asked me before. What do you feel has been the curse of being one?
right. When I discovered it, it's interesting. I'll be very honest. I'm very analytical. So emotionally, who knows exactly when I discovered it? It's probably when I was much younger. I don't have an exact date for it, to be honest. But but as I immigrated multiple times to different countries, I always felt essentially an immigrant, an outsider, but not because I was a TCK. It was because I was an immigrant per se. So the identity is quite complex, I feel, and I only learned how to express it, how to really feel it by language, is after I read the book about third culture kids by chance, about Dr. Ruth. I'm sorry, I'm blanking on her last name, but
Ruth Van Rieken. Yep, Dr.
yeah,
Ruth Van Rieken was on my show at the end of 2020.
okay,
Just to shout out to her, she is an amazing woman and somebody you would wish to be your grandmother because she was so comforting. And well, we tend to have, I mean, we love our parents, but the thing is that they tend to not understand what we are going through. She
absolutely.
not only knows it, but she is the face of the community. So you're like, wow, this is so cool. And I really envy all her grandchildren. But okay, I live with what
It's
I
true.
got, right?
It's absolutely true. I think, like, I mean, now that I know this experience exists, and it's also like I can actually vocalize what it is. I have the language for it. I feel that I can navigate it easier. I also feel more content, and I feel like my heart and my mind is more aligned, both on a personal level, but also work-wise. About I always felt that I had no voice. I shouldn't feel this way, but I always felt that way because of this existential, non-expression, the rootlessness, to the not knowing exactly which tribe is my tribe. And then after I read the book, I went on social media, on Facebook, to try to see if there are third culture kid groups. I think I found one group that's like 9 million people, unless I'm mistaken. Maybe don't quote me on it, but I think it was 9 million people. And I went there and I posted, I finally found my tribe, and I had like at least 1,000 likes or something like that. And I wanted to see who these people look like. So I went through one by one, and I saw this hijabi woman who is from Singapore. I mean, at least that's what it said on our page. I'm sure it's more complex than that. And for the first time, I felt like, there is actually a larger community, and it's not about how we look like. It's more about this experience of sort of being in, a bit of that, a bit of this, and it gave me a sense of roots, to be very honest, I have to say. And it also helps me, sort of find the kind of people that are also like that. It's like I always identified with multicultural experience, but I didn't know the nuances of it. And then I wanted to learn who else is a TCK out there from our, pop culture, to see, how that influenced them and whatnot. But emotionally, who knows when I discovered it? I'm probably still trying to figure it out, to be very honest. But it put me in the positions of being in many, many different networks of people, networks of experiences, and it has its positive aspects. And I think late in life, I figured out that it's actually very positive. But in my early childhood, I certainly had an existential issue until not so long ago, to be honest, to the sense of rootlessness, like I said, and also like feeling like you don't have a tribe, essentially. I am Jewish, that's for sure, from both sides, two different streams of Jews, so Sephardic and Ashkenazi. And my mom, I can get into that if you're interested in hearing, but anyways, yeah. So yeah, my mom is Argentinian, her parents are not. She traveled as a tourist to Israel. My dad is Turkish. His parents are also born in Turkey, but Sephardic Jews from Spanish side. They met by chance in Israel. I was born there. Then the story of like immigrating to multiple places happened. But like all that sense of personality, that sort of experience, it's quite complex because in Turkey, with my name, which is Roy by English spelling, Roy by Hebrew spelling. But when I said my name is Roy in Turkey, just because of the the language and experience, people always thought I was Armenian, which I have nothing to do with Armenians, and I love Armenians, but I'm not. But people thought, because Roy would be probably most likely an Armenian experience in Turkey's context. And then when I was in Argentina, I was always called El Turco, because in Argentina, which means the Turk, in Argentina, there's this historical context where most people from the Middle East are actually called Turkish. It's just like a generalization. So in Turkey, I was Armenian. In Argentina, I'm El Turco. And so like that's the space that I was in all the time, trying to explain myself to people that I'm not this, I'm not that, but then what are you, you know? So, and the natural progression of that at this age, I realized that I found myself in New York because I repatriated. I found that New York was this amazing melting pot. America with all its goods and bads, you know, it, like any country, you know, I still believe is a great place with over 200 million of doses and, you know, progression that happened very recently in the news. You might have also seen George Floyd's case, you know, you know, so I think America is in a great path, and I'm thrilled to be here in New York in this melting pot. So I feel very lucky, you know, to be here.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, I've been following with what's happening in the US at the moment. In fact, for the recent episodes, I've been promoting this video. It's by the Try Guys, whereby one of their main founder, Eugene Lee Yang, actually talk about anti-Asian hate, and this is something that was really heartbreaking for me. Growing up, people see the United States as like a beacon to the world, and seeing how its name is being dragged down the mud. And being a former soldier, you have at one point hold a rifle, and now seeing such a weapon that whereby at one point was your biggest pride, is because that is the symbol that you are now the protector of a nation, whether you are adopted by the nation or you are born in the nation. And then you have to see that being used to take away the life of someone who looks like you, or someone who looks like one of your relatives. It's really, really painful to see that.
Yeah, it's tough, you know, and yeah, I think we need more people who believe in the mission of, and not to downplay anything, but I think intersectionality is something that we keep on forgetting. And I think there are communities that need more recognition during some times, but I think we need to focus on bridging these experiences more. And you know, the Asian American, the hate, you know, it's a real thing. You know, the Black oppression for, you know, for such a long time is a real thing, and also, you know, the American Muslim experience as well. I mean, the list goes on, you know. So there's so much to talk about. So.
Yep. I get it. Okay. You are actually the third filmmaker that I've invited, and honestly, it's always you guys are actually amongst my favorite to invite. The reason being is that a lot of times when we are influenced, it's always by what we see, what we hear, and what others tells about us. This was actually shared by TCK himself, NBA legends, four-time NBA champion Shaquille O'Neal.
Wow.
So when we actually are able to have access to media, this is what we see, what we understand about other people. However, sometimes it's just not as accurate or as fair enough as of a representation. Is because, well, people try to get ratings, people try to get something out of it, because at the end of the day, it's still a business. For yourself though, what make you start a career as a filmmaker? Is it because you want to share what your experience are through a lens, or is there anything deeper than that?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I was a younger kid, I didn't have a large mission, but I've always been in a family of sort of musicians or creatives, and also my dad, when he was alive, entrepreneur. So all that stuff kind of came together naturally, I feel. But art, there's something we say about art. And when I was younger, I was also very much into painting, and I pursued that for some time. And I was into theater, which I don't do now. So, and music, I mean, the real dream, if you ask me, is still, music, but I won't make money out of it. So I won't pursue it at this moment. But really, like, my home is full of instruments, and I have this double life that nobody knows about as a superstar at home. So, what I think, for me, I didn't have the language, and I'm a late bloomer, I have to say, in terms of purpose as well and reason, all this stuff. I attained that to not knowing about my own experiences at TCK, but at first when I started, it was more about performance and art and sharing something, but not having the language to share. I didn't know. As I progressed in the field, I just wanted to have agency over my own story and whatever that meant. And I started in the film side. I started in the post-production because, like I said, it was more of a craft thing at that time. And then it grew into producing from there, but was more like a technical producing thing, where it was more about budgeting and line producing and all these things. And I think it came from, again, feeling like I didn't have a voice. I always felt like an imposter of some sorts, of any culture I'm from. So that was very difficult for me to navigate until I came to terms with my real reality. And ever since, I feel, and that's probably for somebody else to say, but currently I feel that I have aligned my heart and my mind, which is, I felt that this world should be an intersectional place, and that we should, at least my mission should be the bridging communities, celebrating intersectionality. And every film that I produced, every project that I make for many, many years now has that aspect of it in it. For instance, our film that premiered at South by Southwest in 2019 now, I guess, that won actually over there, that featured many intersectional experience, although it was about really the queer culture and more mainly about an undocumented trans woman who's going to her transition in New York City, navigating that with her grandma, who's from a different generation, who doesn't understand what that means. And then in the story by design and written by John Rotondo and Flavio Alves, I didn't write it. I was creative producer on it, but I didn't write it. And, we had many opportunities to bridge these experiences, like someone from a different generation who doesn't understand, or another plot that had, toxic masculine experiences that they, I am not a huge fan of blaming people. I always kind of think about how did these people end up being the way they are, because I believe, maybe I'm an idealist, but I think deep inside, we're all good people. There are haters, but there's something that turns people around. And I think what really drove me to creating stories, narratives, which I don't see myself as a film producer or a filmmaker or a film director or a writer. I see myself as someone that wants to curate great stories in this world and create opportunities for cultural coding, cultural programming of the mind. So I almost see, like, by the way, stop me if I'm speaking too much. I like to talk. So
this is interesting, my friend. This is interesting. And by the way, the movie that you mentioned, is it A Garden Left Behind?
Yes, it's The Garden Left Behind, directed by one of my many brothers. And this brother is I've been working with him for 10 years. He is Flavio Alves, a Brazilian refugee who lives in the US. We've made several films together and many more to come. And then I'll do a quick shout out to, there's many projects I can talk about, but one that's kind of relevant at this moment is at the Center of Asian American Media Festival, which is the largest American Asian festival in the US. It takes place in San Francisco. We have a film called Americanish, which is directed by Iman Zawari. Her background is actually Egyptian-American, Muslim. She's a hijabi director, and we are premiering in May, I think, 23rd in San Francisco. And that also has a lot of intersectional opportunities, which for me, from my angle, it's about this idea of bridging community, which I believe it comes from TCK experience. But so, for example, we have one character who's a Pakistani Muslim who arrives to the US with the hope of finding another Pakistani green card holder so she can get married and stay. But she, I won't tell the ending of the story, but she ends up actually getting involved with a black man in the US, which, if you know about both communities, as I understand it, with great respect, of course, is that's a big no-no, and a black man from, that experience in the US and a Pakistani woman who's Muslim, them sort of having a relationship. And I atone that to this cross-cultural experience, at least from my point of view, for the kind of stories I'd like to curate in this world and see this idea of bridging. And there's so many other projects that I can talk about, bridging between AI and humans, which is a larger story in my opinion. It's a real thing; it'll happen.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
I'm
it happened in Japan. It's happening in Japan with robots and
oh
human.
yeah, it's actually it's happening a lot more than people already know, and I feel that we will reach a point where one night we'll go to bed and next morning we'll wake up and everything's flipped, because there is a rule of economics where, like, if there's enough that is made, it actually jumps double in one iteration of it. So, but not to go deep into that hole, I think all I wanted to say in the end is that I think filmmakers, musicians, poem writers, haiku writers, the people that put the in the Chinese, I forgot the name, I'm sorry, the cookie that they give in America at the end of your Chinese food, which might not be a Chinese thing, but they
No,
give.
it's not. It's a fortune cookie. No, we don't have that
Yeah,
here in Asia. I assure you, we don't have it. It's
yeah,
an
so
American. It's an American creation.
yeah,
I
but
think in
yeah. No, I
I
was
think
just
it's
gonna
in
say,
1953 or something. I can't remember what it is, but no, we don't have that here. So guys, please take note. Fortune cookies is not a Chinese creation.
okay,
It's, I think, a Chinese immigrant, or I can't remember who was it. It's created in New York, I think around 1953 or something, if I recall.
yeah. But I was just gonna say, even like what's written there, I know it's not the Chinese experience, but I think I was just trying to create a nuance there that anything we write, anything we say, it's really cultural coding, cultural programming of the mind, and I feel that it's even more relevant in the children's content, because I don't want to be that guy that gives up on old people, but I think it's really hard to change people as they grow old, including myself. But what we can do is actually inspire the youth and inspire even the children. And I think storytellers of any kind, musicians of any kind, or artists, I think we have to treat content creation almost as important as a brain surgeon would treat their brain surgery. In fact, even more, because we're dealing with something much deeper that we don't even understand. It's
Exactly, absolutely, absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I love that. I will be putting that for your caption when I put this on my Instagram later on.
Awesome. I
Okay.
read it to a caption. Yes.
Yes. Treat it as a brain surgery and treat it as your responsibility, filmmakers and content creators.
Yeah, absolutely. And I strongly believe in that. We had another panel actually, which we tried to create an intersectional panel, and we had a really, really good, many different experiences. And one of the gentlemen in the panel said he doesn't believe in parallel universes, like stories that only feature one type of experience. Of course, we have to definitely amplify our own voices, but there's also the reality of life, which is much more complex than a single experience. Even as simple as walking down the street, especially in New York, if you're in a subway car, like, you're going to have at least 20 different life stories from 20 different experiences, from the homeless guy, from certain race or whatever, to the banker that is maybe several millionaire. And so you're in the same car, like, so there are no parallel universes. But sure, there's systematic issues that we have, injustices that should be mentioned. But I think I believe, and this is just me, I think the solution is to create stories of intersectional experiences that pay attention to the nuances of it, and without erasing the mosaic of life, of course, like, because that's also important.
Yep, fair enough, fair enough. Okay, this is something that I learned back then. I actually pursued a diploma in communication years ago because it was something that I was interested in. But the thing is that in Singapore and in Asia in general, the media industry back then was still not a profitable, or if you want to call it, it's still not something that is highly discouraged because
Mm-hmm.
that was several years before social media boom.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed a lot of producers or filmmakers, they tend to have a certain theme within their work.
Yeah.
For your case, I noticed that there's a lot of representation of LGBTQ, which of course is fantastic.
Yeah. Definitely.
I actually have a two-parter for that, and one of them is actually asked by some of the people that because I've been wanting to do something which has LGBTQ representation, but not being part of the community, I don't really know how to approach it in a respectable manner because I want
Absolutely.
it to be done fairly. I want it to be done accurately.
Mhm.
So, what was the motivation though behind the representation of the LGBTQ community in your work?
Absolutely.
And the second part is what would you suggest though? Because for those who grow up in cultures, maybe we can focus it on TCK who grow up in cultures
Mhm.
that may not be too receptive of the LGBTQ community.
Mhm. So the second one, we might have to talk about it again, but the first one, I would say, any story, any character, essentially in a story, if they're fictional, I mean, even if they're not fictional, but one of the many identities that they have is also, whether they're lesbian, gay, or trans, that's one of the many things that they are, So I'd like to definitely underline that because, you know, um, as you know about the TCK experience, for example, in The Garden Left Behind, our lead character is definitely a trans woman, but even before that, she's a Latina. So
Yep.
it's quite more complex
It's a
than
taboo.
that.
It's taboo actually for within
Yeah,
the Latin community. It's
yeah.
something that I think is a shared kind of mindset that even the Asian community, it's
Hmm.
still really difficult to accept the members of the LGBTQ community.
Yeah, very complex. So essentially, what I was trying to say is that I think, I believe we have to look beyond those titles and essentially boxes. LGBTQ can box someone very in because it's not exactly, someone that's lesbian is not, that is not exactly what she is. And I wish we had someone from that experience in this panel so that they can speak for themselves. But for me, for example, for The Garden Left Behind, why I was really intrigued and involved is that not only that she was a trans person in the story, but she actually is a Latina, and I am also partially Latino. But I will call myself PCK for the sake of the argument. But I grew up at
Why
home,
not?
a mom from Argentina, so I share that experience to a certain degree because she's from Mexico and I'm Argentinian. But one of the many things was that, and then of course, this idea of marginalization, although a trans person is incredibly deeply, by a billion times more marginalized, I think for me, definitely some of the connections were that, I am partially Latino and this idea of like being on the outskirts of the society myself. So, and I always work and my friends, even in university, I don't think of sexual orientation or gender as any kind of limitations for me in my personal life to make friends and so forth. And so it's just an extension of that for me. So in the end, I will say my real theme is this idea of intersectionality and bridging community. And sub themes include definitely LGBTQ films, amongst many others. And for me, it's again, it's this idea of how can we elevate while we include, because when we talk about inclusion and diversity, I think we forget one thing is that inclusion of thought. We forget the idea of inclusion of thought. And I think that is an important element. It's not exactly, in my humble opinion, right? We all have opinions. I think it's not about exactly representation of color. It's more than that. It's the representation of experience. And I see it more and more that is the direction that we're heading. So the director Flavio Alves, he's gay himself, and he's from the LGBTQ community, and he's the writer of I think two of the films that I produced with him. Where he was the director writer, and so he, as being an LGBTQ person himself, he was the one that wrote them, and I'm a great supporter of the community. But why did I make an American Muslim film? It's for the same reason, amplifying many different experiences. I think it's important to have a theme, but my theme is a little bit broader, and maybe it'll change as I grow my development policy in our company. But currently, it is celebrating intersectionality and bridging communities, which I believe is the greatest problem of human history from the starts of Babel till now, and amplified now through social media. We are going into further into our own sort of silos of experiences, and the AI doesn't help because your Netflix and my Netflix on our front page, it only presents us what we like and exclude, uh, literally exclusion of other ideas. So I think we have to come up with a way as content creators. I mean, now it's getting into content, less about TCK, but we have to come up with a way to create stories in the design of it beyond it being art, opportunities so that we can break through those algorithms, break through those, silos of titles and whatnot, And maybe I'm an outcast to say that, but I believe in that. So.
Well, being outcast is what actually attracts people. I guess it's because we've experienced it our whole life. So when we see that there's something that actually tells our story, it's something that actually draws us.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I
Okay.
Yeah, I meet tons of people in everywhere from filmmakers, and I always, I look for, is this person who's the writer, no matter their experience, in their heart, are they thinking about bridging experiences? That's what I look for, in partners and friends, and and it's beyond also, religion or gender or race. I also think in technology terms too. Like, is this person, like my TCK? I believe my TCK experience actually extends to beyond the content, but more into the form. So,
Right.
like, can you combine VR with this and that and this and that? Because I feel like that's yet an ultimate expression of this bridging of thoughts. So it's kind of crazy, and I don't
Absolutely.
know if I'll be able to do it, but that's the dream.
That is the dream. That is the dream indeed. Okay. Yeah, I think you kind of missed out on the one part that I
Oh,
asked earlier, and maybe I can elaborate it a little bit. Yeah.
thank you.
We well, we mentioned you mentioned earlier regarding the elder population. I
Yes.
mean, every generations have its own mindset and its own perspective. However, well, sometimes that particular what would be considered an older perspective is something that could be hurtful in the long run because we've seen some of the impacts of it now. It's in a sense, it's even though it is really painful to watch, it is something that make 2020 a year that everybody wants to forget.
Yeah.
It is some of the impact has resurfaced up and people are now speaking up about it, which is a positive change, I guess.
Hmm.
So, for example, in the LGBTQ community,
Yeah.
the thing is that there are TCKs who have difficulty in accepting, in coming out of the closet, in being who they are.
Yeah.
Simply is because they are in a culture that doesn't accept it.
Mhm.
Is they are worry for one thing is they're already an outcast. If they come out, what is gonna happen to them? So what can you suggest though for cultures that actually may not be too accepting of this particular mindset?
Yeah. I don't know. It's a tough one to answer. I think it starts
Yeah,
at
that's why I asked it.
I think it starts at home. It's like you have to feel safe, no matter your culture. Hopefully you have the kind of support system and family where you can be honest to them. And I think if it starts there, if you feel safe enough, then the rest I think should be easier. Of course, not super easy, but I think more. You said it right. There is definitely a generational divide, and you can't erase a generation's experience as well. They learned it in a certain way, and they have, for the lack of you know, better way to express, they have a lesser understanding of these nuances of many experiences of life. So, and I don't blame them. So we have to include them in the conversation too, and try to teach them or whatever, right? But I think it starts at home. If someone feels, no matter the culture, if you're able to at least communicate with your core family, I think it starts at home. If you don't have the right family, like many other people, I recently spoke to someone who did come out to his mother, and his mother disowned him, and he became a homeless person for 10 years. So, and So unfortunately, that's the reality, So I think I I don't want to make it sound easy, but I think time is definitely something that will help. Maybe 2 generations from now, things will be easier. But I can obviously see that this age of information exchange and that the people's voices are heard, no matter their background, a lot more. So I think this will take Generation Z. Millennial is already, I think, not terrible. They have their. I mean, I'm millennial too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hi.
yeah. Our ups and downs, but I think we're the last. I believe, I hope, I'm idealist. We're the last of that, So I feel like Generation Z is beyond that, and of course, in certain parts of the world where things are not accepted, it's going to take a lot more time. But I think internet is the thing that really is going to help people. I think you asked me another question. I totally bypassed it. The question was, you wanted to make a project, and how do you do it about the LGBTQ community? I think you have to start with including someone from that experience, and essentially, if they're not well versed, put them in certain positions where they can be trained. To, let's say, if you're looking for a producer, or if you're looking for a writer, but you have to include people from the community in the creation of the content. No brainer. And then of course you have to ask yourself, why are you doing it? So if
Yeah.
it's so for me, it's this idea of intersectionality, which also happens to include LGBTQ experiences and American Muslim experiences and Jewish experiences and people from any kind of experience. So for me, it's intersectionality and bridging community. If you're focused on LGBTQ only, then you have to ask yourself, why exactly? And then once you have the answer for that, which I'm sure you do, then including people from that experience to have authorship in it, And we, one of our films, we had people that didn't have the experience, so certain people had to go to a training, and that was a part of the production process. Where like, okay, we have to create a training program in order to make this film that we know we could make, but we wanted it right. So let's create an environment for that. So I think that's one solution, and I'm sure there are a billion others, but that's the way that it worked out for us. So.
How do you feel the concept of intersectionality within a person will be translated to media in maybe a decade or so? Is because now we are in an era whereby this is no longer something that has to be hidden. It could be considered. It's not considered normal if people are actually in this particular group of category, whereby they are not within. Let's say we call it the human binary. It's like you are male or female,
Right.
or you are this gender, you are this race. You have to be in a relationship with this race. We have now expanded on that. So recently, I actually met a guy who is actually Vietnamese who is living in Europe, in Germany, and she is actually married to a Caucasian. And he actually tell me something that the media, or at least in the U.S. media specifically, has been avoiding until recently, is that there's actually a lot of Asian who is married to a Caucasian woman here. I'm like, wait, what? How come? I thought this is an alien thing to me. Is because, wait, really? There is? Okay, because we have been programmed to understand that. At least this is my own experience growing up. I can't say for every single one. Growing up, the Western media is where I actually learned English, and having a really deep voice and somebody who understood English is by watching Schwarzenegger's film. Yeah, don't tell people, don't try to speak like Braveheart, by the way. That is not work. That does not work.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the thing is that growing up, I realized none of these people look like me. I mean, you can see Jackie Chan, but I'm not gonna jump up of a skyscraper to a helicopter sometime soon.
Yeah.
None of us Asians can do that. I don't want to do that. I don't want to die. But the thing is that unless we are in a level that is incredibly spectacular or beyond life, it's something that whereby we are not considered as somebody who is worth of interest growing up as an Asian man. So, yeah, how do you feel though the concept of intersectionality will play a part in how the media will depict it? And this is something that, yeah, maybe I'll just pass that question to you first.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, I probably don't have a concrete answer. But I think, I mean, especially a decade from now, who knows what will happen? But I think it's contextual. You know, I think in every country, it means something else. Intersectionality. Um, for example, in the U.S., you know, certain parts of for example, the American Muslims are still put under this umbrella of Asians. You know, so I
Yeah.
think that's a nuance that many people that are not from that experience don't know. So I think there's still too much headway to be made to really start talking about all the experiences. And I don't know if we'll ever get there. By the way, I have no idea, because there's just too many experiences. That's the truth. I hope we will, but there's just too many of them. And it's hard for, like, especially when we talk about media is totally a market mediated thing. So it basically, whatever the masses are consuming is what the media actually, it's almost, I feel that it's a mirror of the society. It's like we can try to rapture through that, and I think independent film does that, and independent organizations supporting independent projects does that. But I think in the larger scale of conglomerate experience, it's really about market mediation. So it's a cycle. It's what the audience wants. But sure, the executive can make a decision. The executive can make a decision. But at the same time, there are many levels of executives that even if you have your heart in the right place, there are other forces that make you decide. I
I
don't.
actually, I
Yeah.
actually have a story on that. So,
Okay.
uh, yeah, I actually have a buddy called Trent who is a generation Denmark citizen. He's from Vietnam.
I was gonna say.
So yeah, he's actually a big fan of the Power Ranger community, and he doesn't look like a typical geek like people always assume is a fan of this community. No, he's really ripped and he's really tall. So yeah, and he's an artist. So that's not a stereotypical image.
Yeah.
He actually contacted a guy called Amit Baumek, who is a prominent writer within that community,
Okay.
who actually told him that, well, there is actually a gigantic forces that would prevent an Asian having a lead role, not only within the PR community, but also in the Hollywood. When he was part of that team years ago, he actually pushed heavily for an Asian man.
Mhm.
I think he was trying to push. Typically at that time was a Japanese descent, because the source material is from Japan, so it's in a sense it fits as a tribute. But the thing is that a whole giant level of executive is actually against that. And in fact, even if there is something that doesn't make sense, if you put somebody of not of a minority, then they will still try to put it. They're trying to push it.
Yeah.
Is because this is what a whole giant team of executive are wanted. Is because it is something that represents them instead of a larger majority, even though actually by doing this actually allows you to get a better PR, and also for profit purpose, is
Yeah. Yeah.
because
For
now your content would be accessible to everybody. And
sure.
with the presence of Netflix and any other streaming devices, you
Mhm.
are able to actually profit internationally as
Sure.
compared to just one domestic market.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I think, yeah, it's. I did mention about the silos of experience, and it kind of is related to that. It's yes, streamers and the internet and so forth has made it in a way where you can make content for certain communities, and also create opportunities for others to want to watch. But it's interesting because it's like there's so much at work. You have to choose the right genre to break through so that more people watch it besides your community, let's say the right genre, the right story, the right target, market. There's a lot of forces there to decide. And my main concern is always is like, if you end up making a project for like festivals, then you're maybe in a very small, already critically thinking people, like usually festival audiences are. So, and then you go back down to, places like Netflix. Certainly, inclusion is a big part of it,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of ways to be made. I think. And the example you gave makes sense. Like Crazy Rich Asians. I think John
Yeah.
Chu was a genius with that. How they did it and what genre it was, and then what angle they choose on the Asians. The title. That title makes you want to watch it. Everybody wants to see, who's crazy and who's rich, and then they also happen, and then they happen to be Asians. So and then my Greek fat wedding. I think that's what it's called. That was a long time ago.
Yeah.
I
Big
think
fat wedding. Yeah, I remember that.
yeah, that they also. I mean, look, there's always these secret sauces of why things succeed. And I don't think you can backtrack it on how to do a case study and exactly figure it out. There are other forces. Too many moving parts. But my Greek fat wedding, I think, had a similar approach where it's everybody has a wedding, so we can relate. And fat people, this is something like I want to know more about. It's like, I mean, that's a long story we can get into. But so I think there's too many opportunities to do it, but you also have to your heart has to be in the right place. It's for example, I believe in the U.S. about the American Muslim experience, which I'm not from that experience, but I've been seeing that festivals usually program more these themes of liberation of old cultures, like some form of there's a creative victimization of the Muslim experience and then liberation out of it, which I mean, I'm not Muslim, but I have tons of friends and I've produced a film. And so we talk about these things a lot. And there are many experiences that, they're happy with what they have. So I think there are other sides of every story, other angles, it's like, so I think, a lot falls to curation, and to be honest, the form is changing. I think we also have to be, not just locked into conglomerates like Netflix or Viacom or Paramount Plus and the Apple Pluses and these things. That's just it's great, it's prestigious, but you can do a lot of things with TikTok. You can do a lot of things with new technology. You can. So I think there are more opportunities out there than the hate that everybody knows about. So it's just.
Yeah.
It's just content creators. I think they want to usually go bigger and reach larger audiences. But I think the big change happens small. I think just like it would happen in your family. I think you got to start slow and you have to build the market for it. I mean, I think so. What do I know? So.
No, don't worry. This is your opinion, brother. And yeah, I love what you said. Yeah. Okay. This your Wikipedia is not done. Is not updated. That's for sure. That's not done.
Stuff, So, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So if you don't mind, do you mind elaborating? Because I know you have at least 4 citizenships. So do you mind telling what are the 4 of them and how important it is in reclaiming your roots? Is because TCKs tend to not have one basis root to actually build upon it. Like for example, I have 2 older sisters. Both of them are expatriates, but they grow up in Indonesia, so they know deep down within who they are at the core is they are Indonesian. However, not every single one. It's not always a guaranteed experience whereby you move as an adult and then you don't experience what a TCK go through. But the thing is that for my siblings, at least they already have a certain sense of who they are.
Right.
Whereas for me, I've never had that particular root. Most of my life, I grew up in Singapore, and well, I'm pretty much Singaporeanized. But the thing is well, everybody has that particular experience on it. But how important is it to reclaim your roots?
I think it's very important. I'm still trying to figure out, to be very honest. And I think my outlet to figure out is the idea of creating narratives. So, and
right.
Maybe at the end of my life, I will. But I think I'll share one anecdote. I was speaking with someone over email the other day, and I sent her my bio. She was asking for it. And she rewrote my narrative, and she said that I'm a self-proclaimed TCK. And I was like, let me think about what that really means, because I'm not self-proclaimed, I am a TCK. And then I realized that actually people have no idea what a TCK is. That's the reality, so it's like, and I don't blame anyone for it. So I think for me, as I'm still trying to figure out my roots, I'm definitely Turkish. I'm definitely Jewish. I'm a Latino. I'm European. I can say all these things, but I think the reason why I ended up in North America, and I was in Canada for nearly 10 years, which is a whole experience in itself. It's very different than US. I had different feelings when I was there, and I think the reason why I repatriated to New York City is that when I came here, I don't know if I mentioned it before, but when I came here, even from the first moment, I felt like home. Really, I did, and it won't be my final home, but I felt it because I was not questioned where I was from. I felt like, America, like I said before, it's like this place that, it's a great place. It's really a great place. I believe in that, and I felt that, creating stories as an extension of me, which is our company, and I'll talk about that for a second, is like Studio Autonomous. What we do is we have a collective, like a multidisciplinary think tank, and we have someone that's literally in Buenos Aires working with us every day. This is before COVID. We were already in Zoom doing this stuff. So we have someone in Buenos Aires, someone in Turkey, someone in Israel. So all these people are actually an extension of like trying to recreate this intersectionality and in creation of narratives, including these experiences, which is also an extension of me. I'll be very honest, but I'd like to see a world like that where stories are created from many different cultural codes. Probably it's not going to be mainstream, but it's okay. So yeah, all of my backgrounds, many backgrounds, is definitely very important for me, and I can be like a spy. And I think this is probably a general experience where, like, if I'm with Turkish people, I'm fully Turkish. If I'm with Israeli people, I'm so Israeli. If I'm with Argentinian people, although they don't really call me Argentinian, I feel Argentinian sometimes, for a little bit of time, at least during the meals. And same thing with Spain as well. It's when I think of, my history and maybe this is too far back, but, it just, all these things really make me feel rooted, and it takes away my existential sort of, figuring out exactly who I am, what I am, and the fact that this thing called TCK is really something that can be processed has helped me a lot. It's like I said, I didn't know my purpose, or I didn't know my, and it's probably more than this TCK thing. It's probably more personal and many other aspects of it, but certainly having some form of roots and calling myself a TCK has helped me to distill, distill my purpose, really. And I think everyone needs a tribe, everyone needs a family, and for some of us it's easier, for some of us it's harder. As a child, it was incredibly hard. As an adult, it's much easier, and now I have the language and the understanding for my children. If I have them one day, to help them, see that from the beginning of their life, and I think as we become more global, post-cultural experiences obviously will become more and more of the norm. So
Yep.
I look forward to being alive at least for another 40 years, I hope, and seeing what that really means cross-culturally for everyone, So while keeping the root of who we are, but also celebrating post-culturalism, I think.
All right. One of my alumni, who
Yeah.
is actually also a filmmaker, Tony Pietra Arjuna, actually echoed the exact same line. You can become a spy.
Nice.
So I don't know if this is something that some of us shared, but okay, that's some idea. Government, please don't arrest me.
No, we're not spies for sure, but like it's interesting, like when we went for my brother's graduation, this is many years ago, his university graduation in England. So my dad, mom, and myself, we went through the immigration, like the booth in the UK, and my mom pulled out her Argentinian passport, my dad pulled out his Turkish passport, I pulled out my Israeli passport, and then the guy looked at us, is like, "How are you guys a family?" You know, like everyone's from somewhere else. You know, and that was actually, you know, you asked me earlier, when did I figure out? I think it was then, because it was more physical. You know, it was like we
Right.
knew that there's something different here. You know, it's like something more
Right.
unique. More unique is maybe not the right word, but something different. And I think that was it. And my brother, he's very interesting because he tries to simplify things, and I wish I could be like him. You know, he's my hero, my real brother, Rafi, and he says to people he's Turkish. You know, usually. It's just he chose that as his identity. I don't want to speak for him, but that's what I understand from everything he says. And then when I shared with him this book, TCK, he was like, "Oh, this is interesting," you know. And then we started talking about it. And so, anyways, I just want to share that anecdote.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. That's relevant, man. That's everything that makes who you are is based on where you are from, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
One of my personal hero, Tayo Roxon, and I actually had a chat yesterday. Is that as we grow older, we tend to question that what we know about something is actually may not be what we actually like,
Mm-hmm.
or why we actually come to this a conclusion. Is it because of who we are internally, or is it our culture that define us? So we may not have a direct answer to everything, but there's
Yeah,
definitely something there when you actually can wake up and you want to keep carrying on and wanting to discover more.
yeah, yeah.
All right.
It's. I like that. I like that a lot, actually. Yeah,
Thank you. All
yeah.
right. That's actually my last question. That's
Oh,
all the
really?
time we have.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I just
we
want to
can
say this.
we can carry on for a second episode if you since you will be having more works. But yeah,
It's amazing.
yeah,
It's
that's
amazing.
something that
I just want to say this is an incredible experience because it's so unreal. You know, I've been in so many different interviews, panels, and like never about this. And I think this is really what I wanted to talk about. You know, and thank you for this platform. I think it would be interesting to have like several different TCK experiences in one panel. I think, you know, like it's because
yeah, but the time zone is
yeah,
a nightmare.
yeah,
The time zone is a nightmare to organize that. I mean,
yeah,
I already have to wake up at 6 a.m., dude.
I know.
I don't know how many odd other times is available for me.
Thank you for doing
Yeah,
this. You're my
yeah.
hero. Seriously, thank you. It's great.
Oh, thank you, thank you. Yeah, thank you. Oh, okay. You heard that, Mom? I'm a hero.
You are. This is episode what, 88, and you've been going for a
88.
while.
Yeah,
Yeah. There aren't many
80.
outlets for TCK, so that, you know, you're doing something different and you're doing something that is valuable for a pretty big part of human population too. You know, so and many of
Thank
them
you.
don't even know that maybe they are TCK. So maybe they will, you know, learn more.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that's what this thing is all about. It's, well, I've already said it before, I'll say it again. I've never created this for profit or for fame. I mean, if you want to give it to me, I don't mind. But the thing is when I actually created this, it was actually an outlet for me. I think this is something you and I share, is that
Oh yeah.
this thing is an outlet that actually allows us to be who we are, to
Yeah.
express who we are, and this allows others whom I had invited, like yourself, to actually share their story without any kind of script, any
Mhm.
kind of way a narrative has to be, but it's just who we are. It's our life and it's our story.
Yeah.
So yeah, I actually want to give a shout out also to Miss Lisa Liang. Elizabeth is actually creator of Alien Citizens, and yes, she's also a TCK.
Wow.
One of the question that I actually asked is actually from you, and some of my past alumni who actually helped me with some of the question with regards to the LGBTQ community.
Mhm.
Kanako is one of them. The rest, I apologize if I didn't catch your name, but please take note that you guys are really some. But I will give you guys the credit later on if I can. I'm sorry, there's several of you, so I can't remember everybody. And yeah, last but definitely not least, I definitely need to thank Roy for making the time to come here today. I know you are very busy.
I thank you. No, no, this is great. Thank you so
All
much.
right.
And all your everyone that you mentioned and you didn't mention, thank you for them too. So yeah. I'd like to say that.
Yeah. Yeah, guys, please take. Yeah, just give me a text later if you guys are upset if I don't give you guys the credit. It's not that I don't want to. I can't remember all, guys. It's 6 a.m. I have a brain fog and I have to create a show. So it's really not easy to do that. But yeah, I definitely will give you guys the credit once you guys let me know who you all are. And for those of you who are watching, thank you so much. For this episode, will be on replay later on my Instagram TV, and it will also be uploaded on my YouTube. If you guys are interested to know a little bit more, or you guys just want to reach out to Roy, his social media sites, his Instagram, and his company sites is already in the description box. Please reach out to him, and do let him know if you know him from my show or any other platform, because this is his own personal privacy. And with that, that's the end of episode 88 of Global Citizen, representation of outcasts in the media. And with that, please have a good day, take care of yourself, and enjoy the rest of your day or night.
Thank you.
Bye.